Hi, my name's Mark Shafer. I'm talking to you from the basement of the Senior Citizen site in my role as Vice President of the Fairfield Art Association. I've got two things to talk about tonight. One is our Art Association's Summer Art Camp. We're going to call it Camp Creativity this year. It's going to be held in the Art Center in the basement of the Public Library from August 7th to 11th. And there'll be two sessions, one in the morning for children that are entering kindergarten through third grade, and a session in the afternoon for children entering fourth through sixth grades. The morning sessions from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m., and the afternoon sessions from 1 to 3:30. The camp fee is $15. There is a registration form that will be filled out for you if you don't have one personally. You can call either Susan Kessel at 472-5374 or me, Mark Shafer, at 472-5418. Let's see, I already said the camp fee is $15 for the week. Registration is on a first-come, first-served basis, and this year we're not going to have a maximum class size. We'll just take whoever wants to come. On Monday, you'll need to bring a margarine tub or a disposable container, and that'll be used for mixing a slice of white bread and Elmer's glue. We're going to make a kind of a homemade Play-Doh, do some sculptures with that. Tuesday, the camp will be held at Jefferson County Park. You'll have to get your child there and back on your own. On Wednesday, we'll be decorating switch plates. Each camper will be supplied with a switch plate, a cover for a light switch, and we'll decorate those with spray paint and glitter and rickrack and buttons and sequins and anything else you can think of. So children can bring things they want to decorate. They should also be on the lookout for a smooth rock, because once they get their switch plates done, they may have some time and may want to decorate that rock. And they'll also need to bring a paint shirt or a apron or something with their name on it. Thursday's project, I'll be in charge of that. We're going to go downtown and make circus wagons out of buildings. We're going to observe the detail on the storefronts around town and make this big circus train. I think we're going to call it Circus Town, actually. I think that takes care of it. So if you have a child or a grandchild that would like to have some fun this week or this summer for a week, get in touch with us and we'll sign you up. Hi, it's Mark Shafer again. This time we're going to talk about the mural that the Art Association is sponsoring for the Senior Citizen site. Oh my, it's been quite a while. 2 years ago, I think, the seniors contacted the Art Association and asked if they would be interested in doing a mural for the dining room at the center here. And we thought that would be a good community service project. The seniors were willing to buy the paint and get the board primed and so forth. I had a design, a drawing I'd done of the north side of the square a few years ago, and I thought, oh gee, it'll be easy. I'll just throw that slide up on the wall and trace it, and we'll fill it in like a coloring book, and we'll be done. Well, as it turned out, we couldn't get far enough away from the wall to get the slide image as big as we wanted it. So I ended up having to redraw the whole thing, which was last summer's project. So this past school year and into this summer, we're actually working on the painting itself. I had a committee from the Art Association board help transfer the drawing to the panels that had been primed for us. Then during the school year, I had high school students who needed community service hours who helped fill in some of the large areas of color, like the broad areas of green for the grass, the gradations of blue in the sky, and some of the heavy outlining and shading on the buildings. Then we've worked off and on filling in the large, broad areas of color for each building. And right now you see Teresa Motti making a second coat of red That's going to be the bottom border. And we'll have a top border that picks up the gray of the sidewalk and goes up the sides and around the top of the composition. Like I say, this depicts Fairfield at about 1910, the north side of the square. And as soon as we're done talking about this segment of it, we'll break and go over and show you some of the preliminary things that led up to the final product, or what will be the final product. We're kind of in an intermediate phase right now. Like I say, the broad areas of color have been laid in. It's kind of sketchy. We've just started today to add in the trees. At first I didn't think we were going to have any trees, but decided maybe people would complain, and actually it needed them. The trees will probably not be real leafy, early spring perhaps, so that lots of foliage doesn't cover up our hard work on the buildings themselves. These buildings are pretty much what you would have seen 80 years ago, or the ones that are in evidence today. They've just lost a few pieces of decoration here and there. Oh, is the camera clear at the far end, the west end? Okay, we're in the middle right now. Could you pan back to the west, to the far end? We'll just start at the end and work our way over. The building clear on the left is where the Christian Bookstore is, and that building is fairly intact. The steeple effect, you know, that little, well, it's a steeple, that little pointed pediment above that central window has been removed, and that's been gone for probably 40 years anyway. These buildings, as they grew older, weren't able to carry all the weight of these heavy cornices, so that was removed some time ago. But the interesting brickwork around that central Gothic window is still intact, and a very nice little building, actually. The next building was the J.E. Roth Building, built in 1883, I think, or the 1880s. The second floor windows are still the same, but all of that fancy cornice work at the top is completely gone. We're reinstating that. These two buildings are pretty well finished, although we'll need to do some light highlights on them to bring out the detail more. The next building is called the Centennial Building because it was built in 1876. The only part of it that remains from the original are the two windows above Henderson's frames and things, which still has the yellow sandstone headers with the keystone over those windows. That decorative cornice is long gone. And I think you would probably find some incised stonework under some of the false stone veneer that's on the first floor. But that building's been pretty well remodeled out of, beyond recognition, although the basic core of the building is still there. I still have an empty spot where the sewing machine store is. I need to put something in there. I forgot to do that. And then the building next to that is where the Camelot toy store is now. I decided to make it green because I felt like, all this brick along the north side was going to look kind of monotonous in the painting, and plus I was worried that the courthouse behind it wouldn't show up very well. And as I recall, when I was little, the bakery was in that building, and it was painted kind of a institutional green. So we made a lime green on that. That's one of the oldest buildings on the square, possibly the oldest. And it's pretty well intact. It still has the cast iron decorative pilasters on the first floor. Nothing's been covered up or remodeled to speak of. Everything's pretty much as it was built 100 and some years ago. The courthouse in the distance, of course, is painted with the original steeple and the little cupola in the center as it appeared originally. It would be nice to see that steeple restored, but it's going to cost a lot, and we're not getting a lot of donations for that. But if there's somebody out there that has $80,000, $100,000 they don't know what to do with, I'm sure it would be put to good use. in restoring that. The next building is now the home of Sociables, and it's kind of unusual for a storefront in that most Victorian storefronts are of what's called the Italianate style. They have their antecedents in the Italian Renaissance. This building, however, is more of the Queen Anne style. It's the cousin of a building like the Beck Mansion, where the Slocus live on D and Burlington. So it's unusual in that it departs somewhat from the typical Victorian storefront that you see in small-town Midwest. Then, of course, the old bandstand that was torn down in 1969, I believe. And the reason it's off to one side, it's not centered in the park the way the current bandstand is, because of the light tower that stood there at one time. In 1880-something, this 180-foot light tower was built, and it could be seen from miles around. It was an electric light tower, and supposedly the first municipal lighting system west of the Mississippi, public electric municipal lighting system. The first in the country was one that Thomas Edison set up himself, so it's curious that Fairfield was so close on the heels of somebody like Thomas Edison with their public lighting. Anyhow, the bandstand is off to one side because the light tower preceded it by some 20 years and stood, straddling the crosswalk there. The buildings behind the bandstand, the one directly behind it doesn't have anything painted in it at all yet, and it's pretty much as you see it today, as is the one next to it. Those were built in the teens. The one to the right of the bandstand, I'm thinking is kind of a Georgian revival. There was a colonial revival movement in the United States at about the time of the First World War into the 20s. And the kind of stonework that you see on those windows is similar to buildings that you see on MIU campus that were built by Parsons College, and in the Georgian style. And finally, the building at the back, I'm going to move over a little bit, or to my back, I should say. The building to the far east, there was a fire in that building, I suppose 25 years ago. And even though the basic building still stands, those windows and the original cornice were damaged in the fire and removed and not restored. This painting is painted on birch plywood. And we have Lane Bush of the senior site to thank for priming these boards and getting them put up for us. It's 4x8 plywood. And one of the sections has been trimmed off a little bit so that the seam is a little off-center. I tried to design it so the Sociables building tower was right on that seam, so as to cut down on, on any obvious crack in the picture. The paint is acrylic. We're using a system of transparent and opaque paints, so that you can see, you mix your acrylic paint with a gel medium, which is transparent when it dries, so that you can see layers of brush strokes, one on top of the other. And Teresa right now is touching up that border. The border's on there for two reasons. One, to give it kind of a framed effect, and also to cover up the screws that are going to hold it to the wall. And if you look closely in the finished composition, you'll see the signatures of everybody that worked on this, which will be kind of a fun hide-and-seek thing for people to come in when they have kids and grandkids and say, see if you can see where Grandma has written her name. High school students worked on this for their community service hours. To graduate from the high school, you have to have so many hours of community service, and this was a nice opportunity for some of my art students at the high school to get their time in. I think we'll take a little break now and go over and look at the preliminary studies for the project. Okay, here we are again looking at some photocopies that I worked from for the design. Here we have a blow-up of a postcard from the turn of the century. I guess well, let's see, this is North Main Street with the buildings on the north side of the square. And then the next one over there, you see the bandstand and the base of that light tower that I was talking about. Yeah, here's the light tower right here. Okay. And this is a close-up of the drawing, a detail of the drawing I did that I thought we could just, project on the wall. That turned out to be too small, so I photocopied some of the details I had photographed of it and used that as a partial basis for the large drawing that you see pieced together directly to the right of that. And the drawing that's right next there is the full-scale design that we traced off onto the board. And I don't know if this will show up on camera or not, but this is basically a photocopy that I pieced together. And any of the red lines or orange lines that you see traced are the lines that we used when we transferred the drawing to the board. I have a deuce of a time on this first building figuring out where the different parts go. It's a real complicated configuration of brickwork, and I keep getting mixed up. I get lost and have to stand back and think about it. But as I say, we're in the final stages of working on the drawing or on the painting. We'll be adding brickwork and texture and foliage and detail. We're going to make sure everybody's signature gets on here, and I'll be glad when this is all done. Okay, we want to thank the Senior Citizen Site for giving us this opportunity to give them this gift, I guess. It's been a real challenge, and it's taken longer than we expected. We do appreciate their patience in giving us the time that we needed to get it finished.